Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We heard before the break about the global context. I want to look at things from a more local perspective. Yesterday, BIM launched the Business of Seafood report, the details of which I'd like to share with you. The seafood industry grew by over 7% last year to contribute 1.1 billion euros in GDP. This is an impressive figure, but perhaps it doesn't tell the full story. Seafood is an industry rooted in local society in a unique way. It comes from a tradition that has its origins deep in history, passed down through generations, and building up around it communities that are interwoven in a marine fabric far more complex, sophisticated, and wide-reaching than one might ever imagine looking from the outside. Irish seafood caught and farmed was valued at 543 million euros last year, with wild-caught fishing accounting for over 60%, or 376 million, and farm-fished and shellfish worth 111 million and 56 million respectively. In volume terms, this is equivalent to 325,000 tonnes, with wild-caught accounting for 85% of that total at 281,000 tonnes. Of the 376 million worth of fish landed, the top 10 ports account for over 80%, with Castletownbere and Killybegs between them accounting for over half of the total. I'm fairly certain that many would be surprised to find that more than 80% of employment in Castletownbere is related to fishing, and Castletownbere is not unique. In Rossaveel, the fisheries sector is the main source of employment, with fish catching and processing accounting for 75% of the value of all economic activity in this area. This equates to 72% of all employment, which I think is an astonishing figure. If you take it a step further and include aquaculture and the many other ancillary industries that either directly or indirectly form part of the seafood family, 92% of turnover and 90% of all jobs in the Rossaveel area are dependent on seafood. Aquaculture, or farmed fish, showed an increase of 13% in value terms to reach 176 million, with volumes increasing by 9% to achieve almost 44,000 tonnes of production. Salmon production accounts for over 60% of the value at 105 million, with Gigas oysters accounting for a further 41 million. In volume terms, more than 95% of all production is derived from salmon, oysters, and mussels. All this production comes from some 300 production units around the coast. Regionally, we can see that here in the west is the area of greatest activity, with salmon production accounting for nearly 90% of the total, whereas in the southeast, the most active sector is oyster production, accounting for almost 3/4 of the total. The largest region for mussel production by value is the south, which at 4 million euros accounts for nearly 1/3 of the total. Seafood processing provides almost 4,000 jobs from 156 companies who are fairly evenly distributed around the regions. But seafood employs some 11,000 people between direct and indirect employment. For example, in Killybegs, the jewel of the northwest and amongst the finest pelagic ports in Europe, they also support a boatyard that now sees fishing vessels built by Irish engineers and craftsmen launched locally. Also, there is a net-making factory producing some of the most innovative designs to be found anywhere. Elsewhere in the county, the life jackets and personal flotation devices that have become a hallmark of our industry are made by another factory, again providing much-needed local employment. And that local connection with fishermen and fish farmers means that from this factory come the most up-to-date designs. Who could have imagined that fishermen all over Europe and beyond wear life jackets made in Ireland and designed with the insight and experience that comes from a lifetime experience of local fishermen? Turning to exports, seafood accounted for 559 million worth of exports in 2016. In value terms, the pelagic category accounted for 150 million, with shellfish such as prawns, shrimp, and crab worth 1/4 of the total, while mussels and oysters exported were worth almost 100 million. Expressed in volume terms, over 212,000 tonnes were shipped from Ireland last year to customers all around the world. The spread and geographical range of Ireland's seafood customers shown here on the world map is impressive and stretches from Europe to Africa right through to Asia. One of the most striking things for me since I started my role in the last couple of months is the caliber and breadth of customers that some of our seafood exporters have developed, despite being located in some of the most remote parts of our country. Sales to Europe predominate, and if we now calculate this excluding Britain, they amounted to over 60% last year. Although Britain is our second joint largest export market, we are relatively less dependent on it compared with many other food categories. The other impressive feature is the continuing rapid growth of trade to Asia, with, of course, China becoming an ever-increasing, more significant market. Over the next few months, BIM will be finalising our strategy, but the direction has been established and is organised around 4 pillars. From my perspective, the pillars provide a framework for us to focus on what we should be doing to assist the seafood sector. It is designed to help us more clearly identify how we can work better together with the seafood sector and for the seafood sector. But the 4 pillars cannot be seen in isolation or independent of one another. It is only when they come together we will be able to achieve what we want to do. Simply put, our job is to support and enable the seafood sector to sustainably grow. Focusing on how every part of the sector can develop in a sustainable way is what our strategy will set out to achieve. Beginning with innovation, many tend to think of this in terms of processing, packaging, and new product development. Undoubtedly, there is scope to innovate in those areas, but I think it is important to stress that innovation is not just confined to seafood processing, but also encompasses catching and farming. Innovation is really about a process of looking at challenges from a new perspective and developing solutions. It should come as no surprise that sustainability is at the heart of BIM strategy. There has been a transformation in what has been demanded of us and what has been delivered. Yesterday, we published the BIM Environmental Sustainability Atlas, which catalogues the breadth and scale of activity being pursued. Everyone in the sector can and should take pride in the positive steps that have been achieved. In BIM, we have a long history in providing training for our catching sector. We now want to broaden our ambition by providing options for skills development for everyone involved in the sector so that we can better attract younger people into the industry and that we can enable people to develop their careers throughout their professional lives. Our 4th pillar is competitiveness. In April, BIM hosted the European Association of Fisheries Economists. And again, this provided a forum for the dissemination of the most recent thinking in fisheries and aquaculture economics and management. Finally, I want to show you a short video about Taste the Atlantic, an initiative that we collaborate on with Fáilte Ireland, and which links the product with the place and the person. By telling the stories of the people who fish and farm and create the wonderful seafood that we as consumers appreciate so much, and that the tourists who visit Ireland remember and recount long after their holidays are over, we can make a memorable impact. The public have an affinity for food producers in general, and the skill of seafood producers resonates well with people when they hear their stories. It is important to positively present the sector and the role it plays in the economic life of our country and of our coastal communities.
I've fished this bay since I was 14. We had a 16-foot punt and we'd be out fishing pots around the bay. Every day we'd have a bucket of crab and lobster going home in the evening. You can't learn fishing from a book. It's instinctive. Instinct you learn from experience. It's the little bits and pieces from our history that determine what we do later on.
Killary Harbour is perfect for growing mussels. It's beautiful, and when people pass through and try the shellfish, I suppose they connect with Killary in some way. The
fish that we get here is second to none, whether it's organic or wild. The water here is so pure, you just won't find better. For me, it's all about the process. I consider myself to be very lucky to be doing something I love doing in a place that I love living.
Our father started farming oysters here over 60 years ago. We've been perfecting our process ever since. We have the Burren to the south, Connemara to the north, and of course you have the wild Atlantic flowing in twice a day.
We're at the mercy of the Atlantic. The sea has given families a living for generations. Local sustainable fishing gives us the right produce. Fresh fish being caught and eaten within a day or two. A real taste of the Atlantic.